Today, an FDA panel supports 5 agents for pediatric patients, an expanded European approval in myeloma, a new drug application in melanoma, a breakthrough therapy designation in GVHD, promising findings in ovarian and liver cancer, disappointing results in breast cancer, the official launch of the Oncology Care Model alternative payment plan, and a new position for an FDA leader. Welcome to Enclave News Network. I'm Gina Columbus. In a 2-day meeting, members of the Pediatric Subcommittee of the FDA's ODAC panel showed their support for new clinical trials examining promising cancer therapies in pediatric patients. At the meeting, 5 pharmaceutical companies discussed ongoing or planned early-stage pediatric trials that are exploring atezolizumab, LOXO-101, entrectinib, venetoclax, and tazemetostat. All 5 plans by Genentech, Loxo Oncology, Ignata, AbbVie, Genentech, and Epzyme, respectively, were supported. With the exception of venetoclax, the studies are exploring the agents across several pediatric indications. Atezolizumab is being explored primarily in those expressing PD-L1, while LOXO-101 and entrectinib are being looked at in molecularly defined subgroups, specifically for TRK. Tazemetostat will be explored in INI-1 negative tumors, and venetoclax is being looked at in high-risk populations. The European Commission has granted an expanded approval to carfilzomib in combination with dexamethasone for the treatment of patients with multiple myeloma. The indication is for patients who have received at least 1 prior therapy. The decision was based on findings from the Phase 3 Endeavor study, in which the median progression-free survival with carfilzomib plus dexamethasone was 18.7 months versus 9.4 months with bortezomib plus dexamethasone. This demonstrated a 47% reduction in the risk of progression or death, with an objective response rate of 77% versus 29% with bortezomib. In a statement, Dr. Sean E. Harper, Executive Vice President of Research and Development at Amgen, the manufacturer of carfilzomib, said, "In the Phase 3 head-to-head trial, Kyprolis, in combination with dexamethasone, doubled the time patients lived without their cancer progressing, as well as the rates of complete response compared to bortezomib and dexamethasone. Kyprolis-based regimens have now shown superiority over 2 former standard of care treatment options for relapsed multiple myeloma patients, reinforcing Kyprolis' place as a foundational therapy in this patient population." In melanoma, a new drug application was submitted to the FDA for binimetinib as a potential treatment for patients with advanced NRAS mutant melanoma. The submission of the NDA was based on data from the Phase 3 NEMO trial. In the open-label study, the median progression-free survival with binimetinib was 2.8 months versus 1.5 months with dacarbazine. This equated to a 38% reduction in the risk of progression or death with binimetinib. Additionally, median overall survival with binimetinib was 11.0 months compared with 10.1 months with dacarbazine. The overall response rate with binimetinib was 15%, including 1 complete response. Data are still being fully analyzed, and the FDA will assign a review timeline for the application within 60 days. In a statement, Ron Squarer, Chief Executive Officer of Array BioPharma, the developer of binimetinib, said, "NRAS mutant melanoma represents an often overlooked subset of advanced disease without meaningful treatment options beyond immunotherapy, and NEMO is the first ever trial to meet a PFS endpoint in this population. We look forward to working with the FDA as they evaluate our application and the potential for binimetinib as a treatment option for these patients." The FDA has granted ibrutinib a breakthrough therapy designation as a potential treatment for patients with chronic graft versus host disease after they have failed 1 or more lines of systemic therapy. The designation was based on findings from a Phase 1b/2 study in which ibrutinib demonstrated a 55% objective response rate in patients with steroid-dependent or refractory disease. Additionally, the responses associated with ibrutinib were durable, as a biomarker analysis indicated activity in B and T cells. Of the 22 patients in the trial, there was 1 complete response and 11 partial responses. Responses continued for 49 weeks for 3 patients, while an additional 3 patients were treated and responded for 23 weeks. 92% of patients were able to reduce or discontinue use of corticosteroids. Ibrutinib was first approved in 2013 as a treatment for patients with mantle cell lymphoma and has since gained further indications for chronic lymphocytic leukemia and Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. Preclinical models have shown that ibrutinib can reduce the severity of GVHD through the blockade of BTK and the IL-2 inducible T-cell kinase. In ovarian cancer, niraparib was found to improve progression-free survival as a maintenance therapy for patients with recurrent ovarian cancer harboring a germline BRCA mutation or homologous recombination deficiency. This was reported from the Phase 3 NOVA trial, in which the agent improved PFS by 15.5 months when compared with placebo for patients responding to platinum-based chemotherapy who harbored a gBRCA mutation. Patients in the trial had histologically confirmed ovarian, fallopian tube, or primary peritoneal cancer that was high-grade serous histology or had a known gBRCA mutation. This represented a 73% improvement in the risk of progression or death. In non-gBRCA mutated tumors with HRD positivity, the PFS advantage was 9.1 months with niraparib versus placebo. Frequently observed grade 3-4 treatment-emergent adverse events with niraparib were thrombocytopenia, anemia, and neutropenia. Overall, 14.7% of patients did discontinue treatment with niraparib during the study. Based on these findings, Tesaro, the manufacturer of the drug, will be submitting regulatory filings to both the FDA and EMA. In hepatocellular carcinoma, treatment with regorafenib was found to improve overall survival in patients with unresectable disease who progressed on sorafenib, according to data from the Phase 3 RESOURCE trial. The study, which was presented during the 2016 World Congress on Gastrointestinal Cancer, showed the median OS with regorafenib was 10.6 months versus 7.8 months with placebo plus best supportive care. This demonstrates a 38% reduction in death with regorafenib. Median progression-free survival was 3.1 months in the regorafenib arm and 1.5 months in the placebo arm, leading to a 54% reduction in the risk of progression or death. Additionally, the overall response rate was 10.6% and 4.1% with regorafenib and placebo, respectively. In considering stable disease, the overall disease control rate was 65.2% with regorafenib and 36.1% with placebo. According to Bayer Pharmaceuticals, the developer of regorafenib, these findings will be submitted to the FDA and EMA for potential approval. A Phase 3 study that was investigating the immunotherapy vaccine nelipepimune-S, also known as Nuvax, to prevent recurrence in early-stage breast cancer has been stopped due to futility. The halting of the trial, which was known as PRESENT, followed a recommendation by the Independent Data Monitoring Committee based on a planned safety and futility analysis. The analysis was triggered after 70 qualifying disease-free survival events were reached. Previously, in Phase 1 and 2 trials, nelipepimune-S demonstrated a statistically significant increase in DFS in patients with node-positive, HER2 IHC 1-positive and 2-positive patients with early-stage breast cancer. Particularly in combination with sargramostim and GM-CSF, nelipepimune-S was seen to not only be well-tolerated, but also show efficacy at raising HER2 immunity. In addition to the PRESENT trial, the vaccine is also being studied in several other breast cancer studies. A Phase 2b trial is investigating nelipepimune-S in combination with trastuzumab in node-positive and HER2 IHC 1-positive and 2-positive disease. Another Phase 2 study is looking at the vaccine in high-risk node-positive or node-negative HER2 IHC 3-positive patients. Nelipepimune-S plus GM-CSF vaccine therapy is also being explored in a Phase 2 trial of patients with ductal carcinoma in situ. Additionally, there are trials planned in gastric cancer. After announcing its intention to launch the Oncology Care Model alternative payment plan for oncology care last year, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services said it has 196 practices across the United States. It also gave an official start date of July 1, 2016. The goal of the OCM is to reduce the outlay for oncology spending while improving quality of life. The CMS said this would be achieved through financial incentives that encourage better coordination of care and elimination of unnecessary care. The OCM breaks practice payment down into 6-month episodes of patient care, which are triggered by the start of administration of chemotherapy. Then, practices are required to track all related care. The OCM allows for a $160 monthly payment per patient, and practices could be eligible to share in the savings they achieve for CMS. Practice administrators have shown mixed support about participating in the alternative payment plan. They said they recognize that value-oriented care is going to be the emphasis at CMS from now on, and they want to be involved as new systems and policies are introduced. However, they said the preparations have been very complex. They said CMS has not provided enough information and that CMS's data requirements for performance measurement have been difficult to fulfill. Under the plan, practices are required to follow nationally recognized treatment guidelines, provide 24/7 access to care, coordinate diagnostics and patient care with other physicians, be sure that test data is received in advance of patient visits, and provide access to resources such as emotional support groups and pain management services. Dr. Richard Pazder has been named the acting director of the FDA's newly created Oncology Center of Excellence, which is aimed to expedite the development of novel combination products and support an integrated approach to oncology research. The OCE is a component created from Vice President Joe Biden's National Cancer Moonshot Initiative, which works to double the current rate of cancer research and make a decade of advances in prevention, diagnosis, and care in 5 years. The OCE will consist of a cross-center regulatory approach to enhance the coordination of clinical review across oncology-related drugs, biologics, and medical devices. Pazder will play a critical role serving as the central point of engagement for oncology stakeholders, including professional associations, patient-focused advocacy groups, and industry, academia, and sister agencies, such as the National Institutes of Health. Pazder previously served as director of the Office of Hematology and Oncology Products in the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. In a statement, FDA Commissioner Dr. Robert Califf said, "After a competitive internal search, I can think of no one more qualified to shepherd the agency into a new era of regulation over oncology products than the FDA's own Dr. Richard Pazder, who has led the FDA for nearly 20 years in reshaping and modernizing the review of cancer treatments. Dr. Pazder is the person the FDA needs to get the OCE up and running because of his in-depth understanding of the inner workings of the FDA, his deep expertise in treating this complex disease, and his ability to move the agency forward in this complicated task." That's all for today. Thank you for watching Enclave News Network. I'm Gina Columbus.